The morning broke over Elmwood Estates like a fragile promise, soft and unassuming, the kind of dawn that whispered normalcy. Elena Harper had been up since 4:15 a.m., not by choice, but because her 5-month-old son, Liam, had decided sleep was optional. His cries had pierced the stillness of the townhouse, sharp and insistent, pulling her from shallow doze. Her husband, Daniel, had already left for his shift at the fire station, his boots thudding softly down the stairs at 3:30 a.m. He'd paused to kiss her cheek, his lips warm against her clammy skin, and murmured, "Love you, Elle. Call if you need me." She nodded, half asleep, Liam fussing against her chest. Now, hours later, the sky outside glowed faintly with streaks of pink and silver, and Elena moved through her routine like a shadow diaper change, bottle prep, a quick scroll through her phone to answer a text from her sister. She was bone-tired, her eyes gritty, but she pushed forward on autopilot. By 6:50 a.m., she was ready to face the day, or at least pretend to. Barefoot, still in faded pajama pants and a stretched-out tank top, she cradled Liam against her shoulder, his tiny body warm and heavy with the promise of sleep. In her other hand, she juggled her keys, a half-empty mug of coffee she hadn't touched, and her phone, buzzing with a reminder about a work email she'd ignored. The plan was simple. Get Liam into his car seat, start the SUV, let the air conditioning hum him into a nap while she darted back inside for the diaper bag she'd forgotten on the couch. 2 minutes, maybe 3. She'd done it 100 times. Elena parked in her usual spot, right in front of their townhouse, the same patch of asphalt she'd claimed since they moved in 2 years ago. A few weeks back, the Elmwood Estates Homeowners Association had painted a crisp yellow line along the curb, marking off approved parking zones. Her front tire might have nudged past an inch, maybe 2, but she didn't notice. She was too busy clicking Liam's car seat into its base, her fingers deft from months of practice. He was quiet now, his hazel eyes fluttering shut, lulled by the engine's low rumble and the cool air spilling from the vents. She adjusted his blanket, brushed a kiss across his forehead, and locked the doors with a chirp of the remote. Then she turned, her bare feet slapping the pavement as she hurried up the steps. Inside, she grabbed the diaper bag, slung it over her shoulder, and paused to gulp a sip of cold coffee. Her phone buzzed again. Daniel, checking in. "How's our little man?" She smiled faintly, typing back, finally dozing. "Love you." She glanced out the window as she hit send, expecting to see the SUV's familiar gray shape. But the spot was empty. For a split second, her brain stalled, refusing to process the absence. No shattered glass, no screech of tires, just nothing. The street stretched silent and still, mocking her with its calm. "Liam," she whispered, the name slipping out like a plea. Then louder, "Liam." The diaper bag hit the floor. Her coffee mug followed, shattering against the tile, brown liquid pooling like blood. She stumbled outside, her voice breaking into a scream that tore through the morning. "Liam, where's my baby?" Her neighbor, Mr. Grayson, poked his head out from across the street, still in his bathrobe, a newspaper dangling from one hand. "Everything okay, Elena?" he called, squinting at her. "No, my carrot's gone." Liam was in it. She spun toward him, barefoot and wild-eyed, her hands clawing at the air as if she could pull the SUV back by sheer will. He frowned, scratching his gray stubble. "Huh, wasn't there a tow truck here a minute ago? I heard the engine, figured it was routine." The words slammed into her like a fist. "A tow truck?" she echoed, her voice hollow. Liam was in the car. Her legs buckled, and she caught herself against the porch railing, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Not stolen, not kidnapped. Towed, by her own neighborhood, with her baby inside. She didn't recognize the sound that ripped out of her next to raw, guttural howl that startled birds from the trees and set off a dog barking down the block. Her fingers fumbled for her phone, dropping it twice before she managed to dial 911. "My son 5 months older was in my car. And it's got someone towed it, please. Oh, God, please." The dispatcher's calm voice barely registered as Elena choked out her address, her knees hitting the pavement. gravel bit into her skin, but she didn't feel it. All she could see was Liam's face, his tiny fists, the way he'd sighed before drifting off. Minutes later, she couldn't say how many Daniel's truck roared up the street. He'd been halfway through a drill when her call came, her voice so fractured he'd abandoned his gear and run. He leapt out, still in his turnout pants, his face ashen. "Elena, what happened?" "They towed him," she sobbed, clutching his arm. Liam was in the car, and they took him. He didn't ask questions. He just yanked her into the truck, tires squealing as they peeled out toward the impound lot the dispatcher had tracked down. Elena clung to the door, her nails digging into the leather, whispering Liam's name over and over like a mantra. Daniel's knuckles whitened on the wheel, his silence a coiled spring of terror and rage. The impound lot loomed ahead, a grim sprawl of chain link and rust. Cars lined up like forgotten toys under the rising sun. They didn't bother with the office. Daniel slammed the truck into park and bolted toward the gate, Elena staggering behind him. "Our son's in there," he bellowed at a worker in a faded orange vest, who froze mid-step, a clipboard dangling from his hand. "What?" "A kid." The guy's eyes widened, and he fumbled for his radio. "A Boss Lot 6 gray SUV now." Elena spotted it first, tucked behind a dented pickup, the windows fogged with heat. "Liam!" she screamed, lunging forward. Daniel yanked at the locked door, swearing under his breath, while Elena pounded on the glass. Inside, a faint wail rose hoarse, desperate. Her heart lurched. He was alive. A burly man jogged over with a keyring, his hands trembling as he sorted through them. "Moo!" Elena snapped, nearly snatching the keys herself. The lock clicked, and the door flew open. Liam lay strapped in his seat, his face flushed crimson, sweat matting his dark hair to his scalp. His cries were ragged, his body shaking with exhaustion and heat. Elena dove in, her fingers fumbling with the buckles, pulling him free. He clung to her, his tiny hands gripping her shirt, and she sobbed into his hair, rocking him as the stifling air of the car spilled out around them. Daniel stood rooted, one hand braced on the doorframe, the other pressed to his mouth. 42 minutes, he muttered, glancing at his watch. He was in there 42 minutes. The temperature gauge on the dashboard read 92 degrees Fahrenheit. No one had checked. Not the tow driver, not the lot workers, not the HOA who'd ordered it. Just a tire over a line, a rule enforced without a shred of humanity. Later, the tow driver, a wiry kid named Joshua, stammered to the police. "I didn't know. The HOA just said tow it. I didn't look inside." The lot manager would shrug, claiming, "We don't inspect personal property. That's not our job." And Richard Vance, the Elmwood HOA president, would sit behind a desk piled with bylaws and say, without a flicker of remorse, "We're not liable for what's in the vehicle. Owners know the rules." But that came later. In the moment, Elena held Liam as paramedics swarmed, checking his VY towels, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. He'd served VY vetihydrated, overheated but alive. The ER doctor called it a miracle, but Elena didn't feel gratitude. She felt a cold, simmering fury hardening in her chest, a fire that wouldn't let her rest. The next day, Elena demanded a meeting with the HOA. She didn't call ahead or request permission. She marched into their sterile office, Liam strapped to her chest, still jumpy from the ordeal, and faced Richard Vance across a folding table. He was a retired accountant, mid-60s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a voice that dripped with procedural smugness. Flanking him were two board members, their faces blank, as if they'd rehearsed neutrality. "You towed my car with my son inside," Elena said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "He was trapped for nearly an hour in the heat. He could have died." Vance adjusted his glasses, peering at her over the rims. "Your vehicle, VY, OLAT section 3.1 parking beyond the designated boundary. We have a strict no-tolerance policy." "He's 5 months old," she said, her tone sharpening. "Yeah. You didn't knock, didn't call, didn't check the car. You just took him." Vance leaned back, folding his arms. "Our protocol is clear. We don't issue warnings. It undermines enforcement." and we're not responsible for what's inside the vehicle. That's your duty as the owner." Elena stared at him, the words sinking in like stones. Not responsible, as if Liam were a forgotten purse or a spare tire, not a levying, breathing child. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just nodded once, turned, and walked out, Liam's soft breaths against her neck fueling the resolve taking root inside her. That night, she sat up after Daniel fell asleep, Liam dozing fitfully in his crib. She replayed Vance's words, the tow driver's shrug, the lot manager's indifference. She thought of the yellow line, that arbitrary marker that had nearly cost her everything. And she decided this wasn't over. Detective Sarah Klein didn't rattle easily. 15 years in a major crimes unit had hardened her shootings, assaults, worse. But when Elena's case landed on her desk, something about it gnawed at her. It wasn't the usual chaos of violence or intent. It was the banality of it. A baby towed away like junk, a system so rigid it couldn't bend to see a child's life. She pored over the file, the 911 call, the tow logs, the HOA's cold statement. When not responsible, she read it again and again, her jaw tightening. Klein dug deeper. She pulled the tow company's record time stamps, showed the driver had hooked the SUV in under 3 minutes, no inspection. She watched grainy security footage from the lot. The car sat untouched, baking in the sun, for 42 minutes before Elena and Daniel arrived. She interviewed Josh, the driver, who fidgeted and mumbled, "I just followed orders." She sat with Vance, who recited bylaws like a sermon, his detachment chilling her more than any hardened criminal ever had. Then she read Liam's medical report, elevated heart rate, mild dehydration, signs of heat stress. Lucky, the doctor had written. Klein didn't buy luck. She picked up the phone and called the DA. Within days, charges were filed. Reckless endangerment against Josh for not checking the vehicle, and criminal negligence against Vance for enforcing a policy that ignored basic safety. It wasn't enough to dismantle the system, but it was a start. The trial was quiet, almost anticlimactic. Vance sat in a pressed suit, unperturbed, while the defense painted Elena as careless, a mother who'd left her child unattended. The prosecutor, a wiry man named Paul Torres, dismantled that narrative with surgical precision. A running car, locked, with AC on for 2 minutes, he told the jury. Not abandonment, not recklessness. A reasonable act interrupted by blind enforcement. He held up Vance's quote, "We're not responsible," and let it hang in the air, a damning epitaph. The jury took 3 hours. Guilty. Vance got probation and 200 hours of community service. Josh got a suspended sentence and a fine. The tow company lost its city contract. It wasn't a thunderclap of justice, but it was a crack in the wall. Elena left the courthouse with Liam in her arms, feeling not Tory, but a quiet shift like the first step out of a long shadow. She could have walked away then, moved to a new town, left Elmwood behind. But Elena stayed. The yellow line still stared up at her every day, a silent taunt, and she couldn't let it win. She started small, inviting neighbors to her kitchen table with coffee and a stack of HOA rules. They came first 5, then a dozen sharing their own stories. Fines for overgrown lawns, threats over petty complaints, a car towed with a wheelchair in the trunk. The anger wasn't just hers anymore. She organized a public meeting, renting a community center with her SAVYNGS. Standing under flickering lights, Liam on her hip, she told her story every raw, unfiltered detail. The room filled with gasps, nods, a few tears. After that, the tide turned. Petitions circulated. Meetings overflowed. The local news picked it up, then a national outlet ran a headline. Mother fights back after HOA tows her baby. Vance resigned under pressure, and 3 board members followed. New rules emerged. Oversight, transparency, a mandate to check vehicles before towing. Months later, Elena stood on her sidewalk again, Liam giggling in her arms, tugging at her hair. The yellow line remained, but it didn't haunt her anymore. It was a relic of a fight she'd won not just for Liam, but for every voice that had been silenced by rules too rigid to bend. She kissed his forehead and smiled. The line was still there, but now, so was Shun, shaken, unbroken, and unafraid. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.